Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the August 2026 Water Conditions Monitoring Committee. My name is Emily Adrid. I'm with the CWCB, and today we have presentations from the Colorado Climate Center and NRCS. So I will pass it over to Allie.
Thank you, Emily. I am going to share my screen. All right. Everything looking okay here?
I'm seeing it in presenter mode.
Oh, okay. Um, Let me see if I can fix that. Did that happen to fix it?
Yes, that works.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thanks, Emily, for the introduction. Um, yeah, I'll go ahead and get started. So here's our kind of Colorado climate update for July and what we've seen of August so far. All right, so we are finishing up our 11th month of water year 2026. So I'll go ahead and recap some of that here. So this is kind of where we are at, sort of a summary of what we've seen so far in the 2026 water year. So as you might expect, it's been a very, very warm year. We've had three record warm months during the 2026 water year, as well as a bunch of other top 10 warm months. It's also been pretty dry. You can see in this panel in the middle here those precipitation deficits have really been stacking up consistently throughout the water year. While we haven't had, particularly, record-setting dry months, we have kind of seen those deficits stack up with time, and I'll kind of dig in more to that here soon. So here's where we're at with the 2026 water year so far. This is October through July average temperature rankings. So this is over a 10-month period. We're continuing to be sitting at our warmest October through July on record. Again, you can kind of see outlined here in the table where we have ranked throughout those months. So we just finished up July. We'll talk about that more here in a minute. Second warmest July on record. And so six of our last 10 months have ranked as top 10 warm. But you can see all of these months, even if they didn't rank top 10 warm, have been very far above average. We haven't really been close to average. May was the closest we got. So yeah, been very, very warm. And then here's the same thing, but looking at precipitation. So anywhere that you see these darkest colors here, those are locations that have seen their driest October through July on record. That includes parts of Weld County as well as parts of the southeastern plains. But then lots of other locations have seen top 10 dry precipitation as well. Um, Sorry, my cat was trying to get outside. Um, it's been very dry. If we look at a statewide, sixth driest October through July on record. And then, yeah, uh, top 10 dry for most of the central part of the state. And so this is just looking at something similar, but this is our departure from average temperature. Kind of take-home message here is that, our record-setting heat has not just been felt in one part of the state, it's been very consistent throughout the state. I think a lot of times we've shown these maps, like we've kind of broken the color bar on them, starting to see a little few pockets who of the state who have maybe ranked as their second or third warmest on record. But again, very, very warm. Statewide, we're sitting at about 4.5 degrees above the 1991 through 2020 average. And then for precipitation, so again, this is our departure from average precipitation, percent of normal precipitation compared to 1981 through 2020 average. Yeah, below average throughout much of the state. Across the Eastern Plains, some locations have seen less than 70% of their usual precipitation, even worse in a couple spots, particularly the Weld County area, as well as parts of southeastern Colorado again. But again, precipitation deficits being felt throughout the state. You can see here in southwestern Colorado, a little bit closer to normal. Again, that's from that flooding that we had back in October is probably heavily weighting that. But again, still not a great story overall statewide. And here is our quadrant chart. So again, just as a reminder, this is accumulated precipitation on the x-axis and then average temperature on the y-axis. And this is compared to all water years, looking at October through July period specifically. As you can see, 2026 is up here in the star. We continue to be way above what anything that we've seen in the data record for Colorado. We're about 2 degrees warmer than the previous hottest water year to date on record. That was 1934. And again, we're over 4 degrees warmer than the 1991 through 2020 average. The dryness has not been quite as remarkable as the warmth, but again, we have ranked as the sixth driest on record through the end of July, and still, among some of the driest water years that we've seen. A lot of these more recent ones definitely pop up here as some analogs, 2018, 2012, 2000. So it's been hot and dry. Okay, so here is taking a little bit of a closer look at July and what we've seen in August so far. We'll go ahead and move forward there. So, July was our second warmest July on record. It was the warmest on record for some of our most populous areas in the state. Lots of the Front Range urban corridor, as well as some of the adjacent plains there. We also saw that in pockets of the central part of the state, as well as in northwestern Colorado as well. But lots of other places, seeing their second or third warmest July on record. Yeah, statewide ranked as number two. And I believe that only 2003 is above that, but I have to double check on that. One thing I just wanted to mention was it's much harder in the month of July or any summer month for that matter to kind of blow records out of the water. I just kind of wanted to put our comparison of departure from average temperatures on here compared to March versus what we saw in July. If you all remember March, we saw truly exceptional warmth during that month. We saw statewide, our temperatures were nearly 10 degrees above the normal March average, 30-year average. In July, we were quote unquote only about 3.3 degrees above average for July. But again, it's much more difficult in the summer months to kind of blow records out of the water than it is in kind of those shoulder seasons where we get more weather systems come through. We're kind of like approaching the limits of thermodynamics in the summer months. So yeah, just kind of wanted to point that out that we were above average, but not as much so to the extent that we saw earlier this year. Okay, for July precipitation, so statewide, we were about 45th driest. We like to say that's relatively close to normal. You can definitely see there were some discrepancies throughout the state. I'll show another graph in a minute that highlights that a bit better. For parts of the West Slope, we saw top 10 dry as well as areas kind of near the Denver metro area or the adjacent plains just to the east. And then kind of somewhere in between for a lot of the rest of the state. One of the top 10 wettest actually for parts of southwestern Colorado, which is a little bit interesting there. And so this is just looking at this a little bit more closely. So this is the percent of average precipitation that we saw during the month of July. So anywhere that you see in brown saw less than 100%, so below average precipitation. Anywhere in the blue colors are above average precipitation. So especially across the Eastern Plains, seeing some very sharp gradients in that percent of average precipitation. Again, that's generally just because of those hit and miss thunderstorms that we tend to see during the summer months. That's very typical to kind of see patterns like this. And then sort of a north-south divide. If we look at the western part of the state, much drier as you headed north, and then southeastern Colorado got in on a bit more moisture. And here is what we've been seeing for August so far. This might not be surprising, but um, it has been above average in August as well. A few places climbed into the hundreds in early August, where that is somewhat unusual. In places like Fort Collins, in Denver, it's not super common to see temperatures above 100 in August, but we saw that at least a couple times at the start of the month. If we're looking at compared to average, the most notable warmth compared to average has occurred west of the Continental Divide. So these orangey colors here represent areas that have been about 4 to 6 degrees above normal for August. And kind of going back to what I said a few slides ago, we often don't see remarkable temperature anomalies happen during the summer months. So 4 to 6 degrees above average during the month of August is pretty notable. And heat is expected to continue as we move through the end of the month as well. Here's our recent precipitation. So this is through Monday morning. Last Tuesday through Monday morning. So we have gotten some beneficial precipitation across the Eastern Plains, localized totals around an inch or so, particularly across this kind of central part of the Eastern Plains and along the Palmer Divide. Some better precipitation in Northeast Colorado as well as the South Park area. West of the Divide, a few areas did get some heavier precipitation from thunderstorms, but generally much drier in comparison. And here is what we have for August as a whole so far. This is through Sunday morning, so I know we got some precipitation yesterday, so that does not account for any of this. Heaviest precipitation we've seen once again kind of along the Palmer Divide area and places east, as well as parts of northeastern Colorado. Um, Greatest totals have kind of been in the range of 4 to 5 inches. And here is how that compares to normal. So again, looking at August to date through Sunday. So western part of the state has been running below normal for August. Northeastern plains, those places that have gotten the heavier precipitation have been running near average or above average in some locations. Southwest or southeastern Colorado rather has also been fairly dry. And August, I just wanted to mention, is a fairly important precipitation month for southeastern Colorado, as well as south central Colorado, San Luis Valley area, Palmer Divide area. So anywhere on this map on the left that you see those orange colors, those are locations that are typically expecting to see their most precipitation in the month of August. So August is their wettest month of the year on average. And you can see on this graph on the right, so this is relative to other months, how much wetter is it? So anywhere in blue tends to get much more precipitation in August relative to other months. So for a lot of the southeastern, southern part of our state, August is one of the wettest, if not the wettest month of the year. So especially west of the Divide, where we're seeing those precipitation deficits, certainly some reason for concern there, given that August is supposed to be a pretty wet month during this time of year. And so, just recapping a few notable weather events that we saw during July. So, again, we ranked number 2 on record for July. We saw some remarkable heat, especially as we got towards the end of the month. This map here is showing locations that set new all-time high maximum or minimum temperature records in July. So the red are record high maximum temperatures, blue are record high minimum temperatures. Um, and then I didn't include it here, but several more of these records went on to then be tied or broken in early August when we had some of that heat. And I should mention that this map is only showing stations with data records of at least 50 years or more. So, widespread records set throughout the state. during the month of July. July is often our hottest month of the year in Colorado. So, these were also July records. Our fires kind of persisted through the month of July. This is a photo of the Ferris fire. The Aspen Acres fire grew to one of the top 10 in Colorado history, reached over 100,000 acres, which is quite significant. And then we also had the Ferris fire in southwestern Colorado that also climbed to nearly 65,000 acres. Towards the end of the July, we did get a little bit more precipitation that allowed the fires to be contained a bit more, but still some, notable burn scar areas there. And that led to some significant burn scar flooding that we saw towards the end of July, and then that's kind of persisted into August as well. So this map on the upper right is showing flash flood or debris flow reports during the month of July. So definitely you can see some of those concentrated around the areas where we've had fires. Aspen Acres fire here, the fire near Ouray over here, Ferris fire down here. So, lots of our flooding has been concentrated over those areas. And then here's just a few photos that we had included in our monthly summary. Flooding in Black Canyon of the Gunnison, Ouray County, uh, Telluride. So yeah, some significant flooding there. And then not too long ago, there was also a death reported in the town of Beulah from flash flooding as well. And I see a hand raised. I can pause or I can take the question at the end. Go ahead.
Yeah, hey everyone, Adrian Berger here from the San Miguel Watershed. I just wanted to chime in on that cluster around that sort of tri-county area between San Miguel, Ouray, and San Juan counties. That most of those are just mudslides that don't have to do with fire, so just super loose soils. We're definitely like seeing more mudsliding this year than we have, I think, in the past with like similar rain events. So it's kind of a question that's been brought up to me is like, are dry soils contributing to this? But many of that cluster are just like rainstorm driven mudslides along the highway. And you do have the photos there and like the Telluride call out that like most of those are not actually due to fire, except for the ones like in sort of southern Ouray County there. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great point, and thank you for bringing that up, Adrian. Yeah, certainly the, dry soils that we've been having certainly are not helping the situation. And yeah, it's not totally out of the norm during July. July is our flash flood season. Um, it's not atypical to be seeing, this mudslide type type flash flooding during this time of year. But yeah, certainly the drier antecedent soil moisture is not helping the situation. So yeah, thanks. Appreciate you clarifying that there. Super helpful to have that local expertise. Okay, so moving ahead into drought. Um, so here is a look at the U.S. Drought Monitor. This was valid as of August 18th. So this past Tuesday, our next one will come out Thursday, obviously. So looking at the U.S. as a whole, a little bit more than half of the contiguous U.S. is currently experiencing some form of drought. Compared to other areas, Colorado certainly stands out as one of the places that is experiencing some of the worst drought in the country. Our D4 or exceptional drought area is currently the largest percent area out of any state in the US. So certainly, I think it's relatively safe to say that we kind of continue to be at the epicenter of some of these worst drought conditions. And so this is zooming in a bit. So this is how the drought monitor has changed from um, mid to end July to August 18th. So this is a 4-week change map. Anywhere in blue are locations that have seen some drought improvements, and then those yellow to orange colors are locations that have seen degradations in drought category. So once again, on the Eastern Plains, those hit and miss thunderstorms have certainly led to tight gradients in those improvements or degradations. We've kind of seen a mixed bag there. And then across the western part of the state, kind of those poor drought conditions have just been persisting. And this is going over a slightly longer time period. So this is August 18th compared to uh, June 23rd. So this is an 8-week change map. And so once again, it makes it a little bit more clear that across the eastern part of the state, we have seen some drought improvements. I would take this with a grain of salt. The drought monitor is not perfect and doesn't capture everything. One of the primary of those being that obviously we're experiencing some very significant water shortages across the eastern part of the state. But a lot of the drought monitor is driven by precipitation and soil moisture changes due to that precipitation. So it's kind of capturing a local picture. So for that reason, that's why we've seen a lot of those improvements across the Eastern Plains. And then meanwhile, the central part of the state has kind of been seeing some of those more significant worsening drought conditions over the last 8 weeks. So despite this recent precipitation that we've seen in some parts of the state, we're still seeing very widespread drought conditions throughout Colorado. Um, the only place in Colorado right now that is drought-free is portions of the northeast part of the state. Statewide, about 91% of us are currently experiencing some form of drought, about 97% in that abnormally dry category or worse. And then of that drought, most of our drought is severe or worse. So about 77% of our drought is currently in the D2 or severe category or worse. And then if we look at that exceptional drought category, about 14% of the state is currently experiencing that exceptional drought. And so this is just the change in the drought monitor since the start of the water year. To no one's surprise, drought is much worse than we were at the start of the water year. This is what the drought monitor looked like when we were heading into this water year. Obviously, the western part of the state was already running behind in terms of drought. But since the water year, um, the beginning of the water year, things have obviously deteriorated significantly, particularly across the central part of the state and the eastern plains, which were drought-free heading into the start of this water year. And so just looking at a couple of drought metrics here. So this is 1 meter soil moisture. So we like to call that that's a metric for our deeper soil moisture here on the left. And then this is terrestrial water storage percentile here on the right. So anywhere that you see these green colors are kind of leaning wet in terms of soils or water storage. And then those yellow to reddish colors are representing drought conditions in those areas. So across the northeastern part of the state, we actually have been seeing improvements in soil moisture. And this map doesn't capture it very well, but we have been seeing improvements in terrestrial water storage as well. But nonetheless, still seeing lots of our soil moisture metrics pointing towards drought conditions throughout much of the state. And I think that the terrestrial water storage really hones this in. Despite the recent precipitation, we can still see that that is quite poor throughout the state. And then just looking at how this has changed in the last 7 days. So this is for the 1 meter soil moisture on the left and then terrestrial water storage on the right. Once again, we have seen some improvements from the recent precipitation that we've been getting. Both of these metrics do lag a bit behind precipitation patterns, but nonetheless, we have seen some improvements across the eastern part of the state. West of the Divide, a little bit of a different story, especially for southwestern Colorado and kind of our central mountain areas and northern mountain areas, certainly seeing some declines in terrestrial water storage in those locations. And then one more drought metric here. So this is evaporative demand drought index or EDDI. And the reason I wanted to include this was if you recall back earlier this year, we kind of saw these widespread dark maroon colors throughout the state. We were kind of off the charts with evaporative demand earlier this spring. That has relaxed a bit as we've kind of gotten a little bit moister heading into the summer. So this is the 1 month EDDI and then 3 month here on the right. So that has relaxed some. So that is maybe one positive sign towards we're demanding a little bit less water from the soils than we have been. So perhaps, in a sea of bad news, maybe one positive sign. So moving ahead into our outlook here. So this is the 7 day precipitation forecast from NOAA. Going to kind of continue to see some hit or miss thunderstorms persist this afternoon as well as Wednesday. That's kind of our best precipitation chances over the Eastern Plains. Slow drying trend as we head into the weekend and then potential for more precipitation next week, but the picture there is a little bit murky. If we look at how that compares to average, how our 7 day forecast compares to what we would normally expect this time of year, leaning a bit wetter towards the eastern plains, again, especially for the southeastern plains, seeing precipitation this time of year is really important. So good to see those blue colors hinting at above average precipitation over the next 7 days there. West of the divide, different story, below average precipitation expected in those areas. And so I think all of us have shown some form of these graphs before, but this is from the European ensemble model. So this is basically showing that over the next 15 days of those 50 model members that are part of this model ensemble, how many of them are showing above, below, or near normal precipitation over the next 15 days. So these forecasts take us into early September. And kind of take home message here is that a little bit unclear. Sorry, I forgot to change my title here. I'm just realizing, but a little bit unclear what we might see as we start the month of September. Some models hinting at above average precipitation, but also seeing some hint at potentially below average precipitation over this period. So going to kind of have to wait and see how that shakes out. And then here are our outlooks from the NOAA Climate Prediction Center. This is the 8 to 14 day temperature and precipitation outlook. I feel like every time I've shown these over the last few months, they've shown something very similar to this, but this is for the start of September. Definitely favored to see above average temperatures as we start our first month of meteorological fall. And then looking at precipitation, are leaning slightly towards seeing above normal precipitation. Again, you can kind of see from that past slide that some of the models are hinting at that potential. So let's kind of hope that we lean more towards that. And then these are the seasonal outlooks that were released last Thursday. So this is for September, October, November. Above average temperatures expected as we head into the fall, but also above average precipitation is favored as well. That is strongly driven by El Nino. And I can talk about that more here in a moment. But that's kind of what we're expecting as we head into the fall. And then I'm not sure if everyone knows this necessarily, but I didn't know this for quite a long time actually, but the Climate Prediction Center actually puts out outlooks way beyond the seasonal outlook. So you can actually look ahead to what might be expected into the winter as well as into the spring. So these are just rolling 3 month periods for the seasonal precipitation outlook, taking us all the way to May 2027 here on the bottom right. So I kind of just wanted to include these. A lot of folks are curious on what we're expecting for the winter time. So this map up here is December, January, February. Again, this is strongly driven by El Nino. El Nino tends to make these areas wetter during the winter months, especially. So seeing some hints as we head into the winter time of seeing above average for seasonal precipitation for those months. So again, a bit of a positive sign there. But one thing I will say is when we're looking at El Nino, so we're in El Nino right now. The Climate Prediction Center has said that there's about a 70% chance that this will be our strongest El Nino on record since records began in 1950, which is a pretty notable forecast. This is the El Nino probabilities. So this dark red bar here would correlate with a very strong El Nino event. So definitely seeing those probabilities ramp up as we head into later in the fall and early winter. But then that relaxes a bit as we persist more into the winter months. So I think there's more confidence in those forecasts in seeing above average moisture during the fall than there is in seeing above average moisture during the winter months. Hopefully, that picture will become a little bit more clear here in the next month or so. But either way, certainly happy to see that above average moisture being predicted. And I kind of just said this, but yeah, when we have El Nino, we tend to get wetter weather across the southern part of the continental US. Colorado tends to be kind of on the periphery of this, but certainly for the southern part of the state, that relationship between wetter weather and El Nino tends to be a little bit stronger. But I think it's important to mention that, our deficits in precipitation still remain really significant, and it will take a lot to kind of recover from what we've been seeing and amassing over the last, year, pretty much. And then I think this is my last slide here, but just one more thing I wanted to include. This is a graph from the NOAA Climate Information Center. So this is just showing for, I tried to zoom in. They didn't really have a great sector for Colorado specifically, but this is the relationship between precipitation and December through February precipitation and very strong El Nino events. So Colorado here in the bottom left corner of these graphics. So these are all of our very strong El Nino events that we've had since they have started being tracked. And I guess the take-home message I just want to point out here is that just because we have a very strong El Nino event does not necessarily mean that we're going to be seeing that above average moisture. So this graph here on the bottom right is the composite or the average of all of these very strong events. So you can see, slightly wetter in some parts, slightly drier in kind of the north central mountain areas when we have these conditions. Some years that we've had very strong El Niños. We have seen much wetter than normal winters, but again, not a slam dunk forecast necessarily, which is a bit unfortunate. And I'm realizing I forgot to update my key takeaways. So this is from the last WCMC, so I'm just going to skip that. But I'll just conclude by saying, once again, we saw a very hot month in July, much above average temperatures, warmest July on record. August has continued to be very hot. I think it's safe to say that we'll probably be seeing one of our warmest Augusts on record, if not our warmest. We'll kind of see how that shakes out at the end of the month. Precipitation forecast looks a little bit promising over the next several days, particularly for the eastern part of the state. Western part of the state remains a bit dry. We're in El Nino. It's going to likely be a very strong El Nino, possibly our strongest El Nino on record. What that means for Colorado, we do tend to see wetter than normal conditions when we have El Nino in place, but again, it's not necessarily a slam dunk correlation there. So yeah, that's all I have and happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Allie. It was kind of jarring to see that image of the US drought monitor from the beginning of this water year. It looked bad at that time, but we did not know what we were in for. Any questions for Allie? Okay, doesn't look like there are any right now. If a question pops into anybody's minds, just feel free to put it in the chat. Thank you, Allie, for your presentation. And I think we can now move on to NRCS. Also, thank you for those of you who have put your name and affiliation in the chat. If you have not done so, please go ahead and do that. And I believe Nagam will be presenting this morning from NRCS.
Hi. Just a moment. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, and I'm seeing myself.
You're seeing yourself.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. Is that better? Or let me know.
I'm just seeing a black Zoom screen.
Okay. Let's see. What did I do? Mhm. Just one moment. Oh, all right. Let me know when you can see my slide.
I can see your slide. It's not in presenter mode or slideshow mode.
Oh. Hmm. Can't see the whole slide here.
You're not sharing your screen right now.
Oh, goodness. Okay. Sorry. Bear with me.
Okay, yeah, we can see it.
Okay, awesome. All right. Thank you for your patience, everyone. My name is Nugam. I'm with the NRCS Colorado Data Collection Office. We monitor mountain snowpack and precipitation. So I'll start with an overview here. So statewide conditions as of August 24th, water year-to-date precipitation is at 75% of median, 30-day precipitation, not too bad at 82% of median, observed stream flow April through July, well below median at 28%. July end of month reservoir storage at 60% of median, soil moisture, which is an average for our two depths. Average is 8-inch and 20-inch depths, is at 28% of saturation. So fairly dry. So I'll go into detail of each of these categories. I also have a section of forecast performance. So we'll take a look at, see how forecast error kind of panned out now that most of the primary period is complete for most basins. It does go through September for some basins like the South Platte and the Arkansas. There might be a few others, but generally through April through, sorry, did I say September? Through August. But generally it's April through July. So we'll look at forecast performance here in a bit. But yeah, so 30-day precipitation is 82% of median. Most basins are in this yellow category, 70 to 89%. The South Platte doing slightly better at 107%, and then the Upper Rio Grande at the lowest value at 66% of median. Okay, so for precipitation first, this is water year to date. This black line represents our current year. The green line is 2012, sorry, 2012. So we're currently at 75% of median water year to date. And black line is in this red shaded category, so which would represent like that lower 10th percentile, and it's specifically at the 5th percentile for this water year, which is below 2012 and well below this light green median line here. These are projection outlooks for precipitation for what is left of the water year. So 37 days, even at the higher end, so the max projections above that 90% even, still puts us into that 30 percentile shading at the lower bound of it, this yellow color here. So even with above normal precipitation will still be below median, currently at 21.8 inches as of yesterday, and the median is 29.2. And then this is just a visual of water year to date precipitation. So again, 75% of median. Most of the state in that yellow category, 70 to 89%, with the exception of the Arkansas at the lowest at 66%. The Southwest Basin here is slightly higher compared to the rest of the state, and that's just due to that early season precipitation that basin received in October. July's precipitation much improved to 109% of median, with the Southwest Basin at 155%, and then the combined Yampa White Little Snake Basin at 128% of median, and then the Central Colorado and Northern Basins all above near normal or slightly above normal, above 90%, and then the Upper Rio Grande at 87% and Arkansas Basin at 80% at the lowest. And then shifting into the most recent month to date, so August 1st through August 23rd, statewide precipitation's at 62% of median. The Upper Rio Grande at the lowest at 49%. And then some of our northern basins kind of doing slightly better. The South Platte at 74% there. So yeah, the major basins values provide a really good statewide picture here, but averaging together, we can't quite look at the areas that are less than 50% or it doesn't show this extreme. So the sub-basin view can be slightly helpful here. So the deficits are a little bit more extensive and locally more severe than the major basin averages. So we can see large portions of southern Colorado and the Southwest, and then central Colorado, all in that less than 50% of median view, and then our category, and then some pockets in northern Colorado, the North Fork, Cache La Poudre, and then this section up here just near normal or slightly above normal. So that is this view can be kind of helpful just to see exactly where things are a little drier, and then there's pockets of moisture as well. Okay, moving into stream flow. All right, so June's observed stream flow is below median. So conditions, remained extremely low in June. And everything below 50%. So the Arkansas at 13%. The highest is the South Platte at 28% of median. And then July, similar story, 21% of median. And then this is for the entire, for the period that has from April 1st through July 31st. So 28% of median statewide. This graph here is our forecast verification exceedance category for April through July, and it places each point in its respective category just based on how things turned out relative to the June 1st forecast. So there was a decent amount of points that fell into that 50 to 70% category. And that would be the Colorado River near Cisco. I have my laser pointed on that right now. So that point captures the Colorado headwaters, the Gunnison, and the Dolores. Then the Yampa River near Maybell, also in that 50 to 70%. Animas River near Durango, down here in the Southwest basins. Rio Grande at 30 Mile Bridge. Blue Mesa Reservoir inflow just over here near Montrose. and then Dillon Reservoir inflow as well. And then in the 30 to 50% exceedance category, we have Lake Powell inflow over here, Colorado River near Cameo, McPhee Reservoir inflow, and then Lake Granby Reservoir inflow. And then there's a few points that fell at or below the low forecast. So that would be Pueblo Reservoir inflow, Navajo Reservoir inflow, Yampa River above Stagecoach. Okay, and this graphic here illustrates April through July observed stream flow minimum rankings. So it shows the extreme of this year with many points falling at the lowest or second lowest and averaging in the second percentile. So the lowest, and then I also noted their years of observation in parentheses next to the name. So Colorado River near Cameo with 73 years of observations, Colorado River near Cisco, and I won't list them all, but these are just the most notable here noted on the right side of my screen. And then the second lowest, Lake Powell inflow, falls in that category. And then in the south west basins and southern basins in general, they're hovering around the third to fourth lowest as far as rankings go. And same for the Arkansas as well. Okay, so moving into forecast error analysis. Okay, this map compares the June 1st 50% exceedance forecast with observed April through July volume. So it expresses the difference as a percentage of observed runoff. So the error is, so error equals observed minus the 50% forecast. And anywhere you see positive values, that represents under forecasting, and then negative values would represent over forecasting. And then where percentages, just something to note, percentages can be large where observed runoff is very low. So that would be here at negative 259%. That's Pueblo Reservoir inflow. So just something to note there. Yeah, so again, this is error as a percent of observed. And then another helpful view is error as a percent of the NRCS median. So this map shows the same forecast error, but it normalizes it by the NRCS median volume rather than the actual 2026 observed runoff. So yeah, because the climatologically median is generally much larger than this year's observed volume, the percentages are smaller. So we can see the same point at Pueblo Reservoir inflow is now down to negative 24%. So the percentages are smaller and more stable here. So the two maps kind of answer different questions. Error as a percentage of observed, which shows the size of the difference. I'll jump back to that one, relative to the runoff that actually occurred. And then error as a percent, this graph here, error as a percentage of median places that same difference in the context of typical runoff volume. So the underlying forecast error has not changed, just the denominator has changed surely there. So yeah, this one can be helpful. So Pueblo Reservoir inflow down to negative 24%, and then the same points in the South Platte, which had higher error with the previous graphic, are negative 19, negative 18, negative 20 there. So pretty close to what was forecasted. Okay. This is our forecast evolution plot for the Colorado River near Cisco Point. I think these graphs are helpful, and we have them for all of our forecast points. And we can view how the forecasts throughout the seasons have evolved. The median point, was around 2.4 million acre feet at the start of the season, and then dropped down to 897,000 acre feet as of June 1st. The total for this season, for this point, is the record minimum now, which is 842,416 acre feet. And that's for the April through July period. The minimum, I don't know if the previous minimum was listed, but yeah, so that is now the minimum. Yeah. Okay. Moving into reservoirs. So July reservoir storage is at 60% of median. The Eastern Arkansas Basin and Gunnison both at 47%. This is the lowest there. And then the combined Southwest Basin at 60%, Colorado Headwaters 55%, combined Yampa, White, Little Snake Basin 61%, Eastern South Platte 57%, and then the South Platte, Arkansas, Upper Rio Grande, all in that 70 to 89% category. Percent of reservoir capacity statewide is at 43% capacity. Some of our larger reservoirs, so Pueblo Reservoir is at 48%, and this is as of the end of July. Let's see, Navajo at 53%. Yeah. Okay. Again, this is a forecast evolution plot for Pueblo Reservoir inflow. Just a couple of things I've noted on here. So Pueblo Reservoir is at 89% of the 30-year median and at 48% capacity. As of August 1st, it was below the minimum. This primary period does go through September. And so, yeah, the minimum currently is 39,400 acre feet, and we're tracking below that at the moment. The June 1st, the 50% exceedance was at 135,000 acre feet. Okay, and then for Blue Mesa Reservoir inflow, it's at 34% of median and 28% of capacity. It is lowest ranked out of 61 years for its period of record. And the minimum for this point is 155,319 acre feet. The June 1st 50% exceedance was expected to be 158,000 acre feet for the June through July, and I'm sorry, this is for the June through July forecast. But either way, yeah, so fell below the minimum there and is now the record low. Okay, moving into soils. This is going to be a similar story for most basins, but I do have these graphs for each of them. So it is expected for soils to be in their kind of drier phase for this time of the summer. However, they are tracking below median for, I believe, most, if not all, basins. So this is the South Platte at 22% of median, and the median is this green line here. In the Upper Rio Grande, kind of at the lower bound of that 30th percentile shading and that yellow shading here. Again, yeah, below median. In the Arkansas at 22% of median, so record dry in this basin. Colorado Headwaters, 26% of median. Gunnison at 36%. In the Laramie and North Platte at 9%, so record dry in this basin. And then this is the combined San Miguel, Dolores, Animas, and San Juan basins. And this is at 51%, so also below median. So yeah, these dry conditions, they will, if they don't improve, they will likely reduce runoff efficiency for next season if they persist. So that's just dependent on future precipitation and how that replenishes soil storage there. Oh, sorry, one more. And the Yampa White and Little Snake Basin, it's at 25% of saturation for the 8-inch and 20-inch sensors that we have. Okay, so the key takeaways, water year-to-date precipitation is 75% of median, 30-day improved to 82%, but then August month-to-date precipitation is 62% of median. Runoff was exceptionally low. April through July, observed stream flow is 28% of median. July is 21% of median. So with a lot of points recorded, their lowest or nearest lowest for April through July volumes on record. Forecast performance varied substantially. Many major points verified within the central 30 to 70% exceedance range. And then Pueblo, Navajo, and Stagecoach reservoirs inflows all fell at or below the low end of the forecast distribution. And then low observed volumes amplify percentage errors, as we saw between observed and then with median. And then error expressed relative to observed runoff was extreme at several locations, and then normalizing by the NRCS median volume showed that some of those percentage points reflected very small 2026 observed volumes. And then lastly, carryover conditions remain poor. So statewide reservoir storage at 60% of median, average soil moisture as a percent of saturation is at 28%. And that is all I have. If there's any questions, happy to take those.
Thanks, Nagam. I do have a question. I think a good part of your presentation today focused on the errors. I guess the forecast errors, if I'm getting that right. I guess I'm curious, like, what that tells us, and how that, I guess why is that important for us to understand and to know?
Yeah, I think so. That just speaks to the performance of our forecasts. With under forecasting and over forecasting, so it gives us an idea of how accurate those forecasts are. And then the two ones that graphics that I kind of focused on were observed and then normalizing by the NRCS median. I think that's helpful too, so you can see in extreme years like this, when you have extremely low runoff, that those percentages for the error were much higher. So then you can kind of by normalizing get a more accurate or a stable number to see exactly how they align with the forecast had what was outlooked. I don't know if that
No, that's helpful. I think maybe, I guess, is it more of like a helpful look back to see, like, okay, this year we forecasted this, but the observed was actually this. So like looking at our forecasts like coming up next year, I guess keep that in mind. Is that, I guess I'm trying to think like from a water provider, water manager perspective, how that could be useful.
I'm not a forecaster, so I can't speak to this in depth. I'm sorry, but I imagine they take this error and it helps improve their models. But
Okay.
again, being an extreme year, I don't know how weighted it will be as well. So there's that. But I imagine it helps to improve their models, and then just take a look back and see exactly where things, if things were over or under forecasted, and try to kind of make that percentage smaller.
Gotcha. Okay. That's helpful. Any other questions for Nagam? Okay, well, thanks again. And I think I will now turn it over to you all. I'd love to hear what conditions are looking like for you all in your kind of corner of the state. And yeah, would just love to hear some updates. Adrian, I saw you turn your camera on, so do you want to share?
Sure. Um, do I have screen sharing permission?
What's that?
Uh,
Oh,
can you give
screen
me screen
share?
sharing permission, please?
Yeah, I
If you can.
can. Yeah, I can make you. Okay, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Give me 1 second. So, a few meetings ago, I think we were all kind of called out a little bit to come prepared to share a little bit more about the basin that we're working in and what the current conditions are. At the time, I sort of thought, well, I'm not a water provider. I don't know if that's up to me. And then I thought about it more and decided I could definitely do that, something I should do. And developing a tool would help me to understand what the hydrological conditions are in our basin and be able to share it with our stakeholders. So I put this little tool together and sort of builds off some of the tools that NRCS has. And so you can actually see the different stations in the San Miguel Basin. And I'm going to jump just a sec here. So there's the stream gauge portion of the site, and everything's looking pretty rough. I just really wanted to show this map. And so there's some statistical shading here to show you which percentile we're in at all of our stream gauges. And so you can see across the board within the San Miguel watershed, we are below the 10th percentile for current stream flows, looking really low. You can see this Placerville gauge is 56 CFS. Brooksbridge and Uravan under the lower watershed, like they're barely running. This is below our major water users and ditches down in the agriculture areas around Norwood, Nucla, and Navarita. Uh, I always like to mention that those senior water rights do keep the water flowing. It does keep the water flowing downstream for most of the river, so they definitely have positive aspects. But here's just a little chart to show where the median is on the day for Placerville, which is 156 CFS, and we are currently at 56. And Placerville is like a good representation because it's above most of the larger ditches for capturing like actual runoff from all of our upper watershed high elevation basins. So going back over to the volume side of things, uh, this just captures the full year volume of stream flow. And so really even worse than, well, I guess it's not, but some of them are, they're all really bad as far as the percent of median. And then, yeah, even worse looking at the period of record. I think on the map earlier from NRCS, it was showed the same thing that we have here. So you can see period of record volume to date in the San Miguel. This is where we are, 71,000 acre feet. Median is 149, and that's going to be the fourth worst on record. And that also is reflected in this table. And you can see when we have this longer period of record, we're like around the there are a few years that are worse. I think it's like 2002 is actually worse. 2018 was actually worse than like 1977. But this is pretty bad. And then in our shorter periods of record, this is the worst that we have. And interestingly, some of those upper watershed stations do capture that 2018 runoff year. And in the upper basins, runoff was actually lower than on the main stem of the Miguel. So that's what I got for the group. Things are looking rough. Runoff volumes super low in the San Miguel. Not a surprise.
This is a really awesome tool. Thank you for sharing, Adrian. If you wouldn't mind putting that link in the chat, so people can kind of take a look at that. Um, yeah, thanks for sharing. And yeah, the conditions aren't good, but the tool is. So, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks,
Yeah.
everyone.
All right. Who else wants to share today?
Oh, I think also
Nathan Miller, Denver Water. So our storage 72% full. That's the second lowest we've been for this time of year. Previous low was in that 2002 drought. And normally we'd be about 94% full for this time of year. One of the things that we're seeing this year, pretty concerning. For several days we saw an 1860 call on the South Platte at Waterton, and our most senior water right, and really the most senior water right in the reach is 1860. We're all the way to the front of the line in terms of water right. We're only that first entity with that city ditch right was able to divert water, and everyone junior to that was called out. So something we've never seen before, and we saw it for several days here at the beginning of August. It's relaxed a little bit to 1863, but that's still a really senior call, and we're reliant pretty much wholly on storage that we have from other years. Our system yield this year is going to be the lowest that we've ever seen.
Breaking records in all the ways we don't want to. So,
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Nathan. Who's next?
Hi, Emily. This is Beverly with the Upper Gunnison River Water Conservancy District. Our the federal reservoirs in our basin are at 36%, and one of them, of course, is Blue Mesa, which is at 23% and is dropping pretty much 1% daily. That is quite a bit lower than 2002, so that's historic for us. And we do have a couple of reservoirs that we use for augmentation in the basin. Both of those are in good shape. That's Lake San Cristobal and Meridian Lake Reservoir. However, there is an in-stream flow call below Meridian Lake Reservoir. So that'll probably deplete quite a bit of storage up there. And Lake San Cristobal is looking probably like there will be a call placed, an in-stream flow call placed as well. So those are going to drop. And our stream flow is ranging anywhere from 5% to 25% of the historical average. So it's conditions are pretty bad up here, and we're hoping that we get some significant snow to fill that deficit, but we're not real encouraged with how things are looking in that area either.
Thanks, Beverly. Gosh, just not great news out of the Gunnison with Blue Mesa. I did hear that Gunnison got a pretty good rainstorm in the last week or so. So
we have had significant rain, but it's raining and then it's getting warm again and drying everything up again. So it's a constant battle.
Truly. Thank you for sharing, Beverly. Who's next?
Hi, this is Emily at Northern Water. So our total CBT project storage is 62% full. Granby is 56% full. Willow Creek is 71%, Carter is 70%, and Horsetooth is 74%. So very low storage levels compared to, normal for this time of year. But we are, prepared going into next year, but hoping for the best for next year.
Great. Thank you for sharing, Emily. Who else wants to provide an update today?
Sure, I'll give one. I'm Josh Matson, City of Aspen. Um, I guess this isn't in our jurisdiction of management, but it does affect our hydroelectric facility. But Root Eye Reservoir is down to just under 48%, and a lot of the releases that are happening right now are coming out of Root Eye to support the Grand Valley and the Cameo Call. So that's dropping quite rapidly. And I guess how that affects my operation is the hydroelectric facility is offline right now. And just because it's such low head pressures, so it's on the low end of our operations, so that unit shut off for safety reasons. But similarly, the Roaring Fork River above Aspen hit low of 10 CFS. It's a little bit up from that right now, but 10 CFS coming through town, and there's a variety of challenges with that due to very similar to what Adrian mentioned earlier, that there's ditches and folks that are pulling off of the river. So what we see in town through the city of Aspen is even less than that 10 or 12 CFS. But thankfully, on the municipal side, we do pull water from Castle Creek and have a little bit of water on Maroon Creek. And so those are still holding fairly steady, but we are anticipating if we get real cold this winter, we might have some challenges associated with that river freezing up. So yeah, planning for that and looking for what we can do to make sure we continue getting the water we need for municipal use. On a bright side, on the municipal side as well, and our drought restrictions, we're in stage 3 drought restrictions, but we have seen a 32% reduction year over year by our community. So that's been a huge win for us in those drought initiatives. But yeah, I think that's it. I think very similarly though, very, very dry. Hopefully we need some rain and definitely lots of snow.
Definitely. Thank you, Joshua. Yeah, those conservation numbers are really great to hear. I know that the mountain communities have been really at the forefront of kind of pushing municipal water conservation since reservoirs and supplies are quite low up there. So that's great to hear. And thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Drew, yeah.
Hey, Drew Beck with City of Westminster. Do not mean to be, or I feel a bit sheepish. Things are pretty good in Westminster. We were able to run some very beneficial exchanges over the middle of the summer that brought our storage reservoirs up pretty high into like the mid 90s percentile, probably like, end of July timeframe. And we've been exercising a contract for Denver Water, Moffett deliveries. It's been higher than what we normally do, so that has also been nice. And our customer demand finally like sort of got into check. We are now sort of lower than what we were last year, and significantly, maybe a couple percentage points lower than the 5-year average. So a lot of things just turned out well for us right now. Current challenges, as Nathan sort of indicated, there are some really old water rights calling right now, and we've had some challenges getting our augmentation water back into the stream so it doesn't get swept by some other ditch that's in priority. So it hasn't been an easy water resources sort of management season, but for Westminster, I think we're doing fairly well and feel pretty grateful for that.
Well, that's great to hear. Thank you, Drew. Glad there's some corner of the state that's faring somewhat well. Um, I see a question in the chat from Allie to Joshua. How typical is it to take oh, there we go. Answered in the chat. Perfect.
Yeah, I guess one thing I'll add is Root Eye Reservoir is going to be at historical lows. The forecast is to be at, what is the elevation? 6980, which I'm pretty certain that this is accurate, but it hasn't been that low since the installation of the reservoir. So the water has never been that low.
Yep, true. Just like Lake Powell. That's true. All right. Anyone else want to share today?
We literally already had. Morning, Emily. I can give an update for Colorado Springs if you'd like.
Great. Yeah.
Our water use, of course, is about 7% above our near-term average with the local dryness and heat. I think year to date we're showing about 60% of normal precip. Although we've got some rain more recently in the past week or two. And then on the temperature side, year to date, about 4 degrees above normal. Fortunately, though, we came into the year with really good storage. So currently we've dipped into that. We're just under 70% for our capacity in use. And our average is closer to 80% for this time of year. So we do rely on that storage to meet our demands. But so far tracking okay. And our historic demands were much higher. Looking back at 2012, we're 20% less water use than we were year to date for that time frame. So using a lot less. And for that amount that we have in storage, that just helps us stretch it further. So it's looking okay as far as system performance. And I do appreciate your thoughts earlier on that stream flow forecast and what we look at inflows to the reservoirs. Arkansas River has been really low this year, of course, historically low. But I do wander from time to time myself as a provider and using the river in certain ways with either bringing water down from upstream reservoirs or exchanging to upstream reservoirs. Sometimes I'm curious what that naturalized inflow would be without those operations and how that may affect some of the forecasted inflows. So appreciate thoughts around that and be glad to take any questions.
Thanks, Justin. Good to hear that Colorado Springs has been able to kind of weather the conditions so far. And Justin, also, if you have any follow-up questions for Nagam, I can follow up with her contact information. I see Swithin in the chat calling out the Rio Grande and Yampa White. If there's anybody from the Rio or Yampa on the call today, we'd love to hear from you. Swithin and I would love to hear from you. I don't know if there's anybody on from those basins. Swithin, would you like to provide an update?
I guess I could. I wasn't planning on it. I mean, we're in the South Platte with Highlands Ranch water. And Denver, looking pretty good for Highlands Ranch. We're much newer water district with rights going back to the 1980s. So it's obviously been a difficult year, but we're used to that. As Nathan said, the 1860 water right calls have made things difficult for everybody, just reflection of how dry it is. For our demands, we're in stage one. We're asking for 15 to 20% reduction in water use from our 100,000 person population. So far, we haven't seen a reduction. We're running right around average demands or a couple percentage above. But if you compare that to dry years like this, we're usually 10 to 15% above. So I think we are getting good response for our water restrictions over what we'd see if we didn't have those in place. Our storage contents at this point are 48% of full. That is lower than normal. We are pumping our groundwater as we can and looking to weather another year or two of these dry conditions is the plan, unfortunately.
Thanks for the report out, Swithin.
And I really appreciate the other basins answering the call and getting some response for places other than just the large municipalities.
I concur. All right. Well, maybe with that, if there's, I guess, last call for updates from around the state. Okay. Well, hearing none, I think we can conclude today's WCMC meeting. I really appreciate all the conversation following the presentations today. Appreciate the presenters for taking the time this morning. Our next meeting is on September 22nd. So I will see you all then. Thank you so much.